things first. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. They called. We're right off the bat, 320 and down to 350.
You are. I just have to let the audience know. Jenna has a batting average every day on this show this week, and the goal is 400 hasn't been done since Ted Williams.
Right.
You get 390, that's George Brett territory. 300 gets you in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
We're just trying to stay above 200. You were 1 for 1 before the show started because
That was 8 seconds ago.
You got a joke that I didn't, but I feel like getting his name wrong
is a big deal.
I mean, that's like the big sombrero. That's like an 0 for 5.
That's like getting your name wrong
Yeah.
on the SATs, which you get 800 points for. We're going to start over.
We started off being like, trying to be like Ted Williams, but we ended up like Ted. Ted the Bear.
Good deal. Good
Cris
morning, everybody.
Carter and Nick Wright. And we've got a great show for you. We're going to dive right in. An NBA general manager says LeBron is the GOAT.
Oh.
Tom Brady is ready for a new challenge. And A-Rod, Aaron Rodgers, taking the field this evening. That's where we start. Cancel your fancy plans tonight, folks. Packers and Steelers. All right, not quite as much hype as Super Bowl 45, but close. Okay, not close, but this is a game. Packers missed the playoffs last season for the first time since 2008. Aaron Rodgers was a big reason why. Only played 7 games after breaking his collarbone. But he says he's excited to get back out there tonight. CeCe, how well are the Packers set up to contend this season when you got a guy like Aaron Rodgers at the helm?
Well, we've seen every time that Aaron Rodgers has been healthy, since he was named the starter, replacing the legendary Brett Favre, they've had a chance to be one of the best teams. And when you have someone like Aaron Rodgers, it's more of the old NBA effect, where we're typically the best player in the NBA team. They're going to win more championships, win more games. With Aaron Rodgers, because he can dictate so many different things inside of the game that you're going to give him a chance to be able to play against anyone. You know, you're not going to look at the roster. You do different things with his roster and New England's roster because we have so much faith in the quarterback that we know the other players are going to be better. We're like, oh, their wide receivers. Like, well, what about their offensive line? But they got that guy.
Right.
So as long as they have that guy, he loves football. I believe he's coming back this year with a point to prove after a season being cut short last year by Anthony Barr there of the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers wants to get the Packers back in the Super Bowl. And I believe this year, with everything that's gone on, even him injured last year, losing personnel, losing coaches without his input, he seemed to be pretty upset about those things, and I believe he'll use that as motivation, Nick.
If all rosters and coaching staffs were created equal, and the only differentiator team to team was quarterback, if guys 2 through 53 and the coaches were all the same on all 32 teams, then this Packers team would win every year. Like, if he had the same talent as the teams he's going up against, the same coaching ability, the same schematic edge as some of the other teams he's gone up against, no one's better than him. It would be Rodgers versus Brady in the Super Bowl every year. So why has the Packers not been back to a Super Bowl since they won one? Well, who is their running back this year? That's not a rhetorical question.
No.
That's a real one. Yeah. The last couple of years, it was a dude wearing 88. This year, is it going to be their 4th-round pick from 2017 or their 5th-round pick for 2017? Like, here's another question. Who, other than Clay Matthews, is an impact front 7 defender? I'm not certain. Now, Khalil Mack could change those things. And typically when you hear about a marquee player being available, he's available for a reason, because you got to either he has off-field issues, or in Mack's case, he's going to set a new standard for salary. And you're like, all right, do we want to give up multiple first-round picks and make this guy the highest-paid player in the league at his position? If you're the Packers with Aaron Rodgers, absolutely. Because if you added that type of talent, then they go from being in contention just because they have Aaron Rodgers to being one of the, maybe the favorite, because they have the best player on one side of the ball and arguably also the best player on the other side of the ball.
Why hasn't the organization done more to support him? They know the same thing we know. Why would you say, well, we can contend with Aaron Rodgers, as opposed to, hey, we can win with Aaron Rodgers and, say, a couple of weapons, or a guy like Khalil Mack on defense?
Well, their philosophy just hasn't worked. They have a philosophy as an organization. They're going to grow organically, and that means limited participation in free agency. and they're going to grow through the draft. They're going to draft players, develop them in-house. They realize it's a special environment where they play, but they thought that that was going to be the way for them to have success. But they have seen that it has not led to success. They haven't participated in free agency like other teams, and other teams have a tremendous advantage. I believe you bring up a great point as far as the Khalil Mack. I believe that right now, at this point in Aaron Rodgers' career, Aaron's not 36. He's not 37. He's not Drew Brees. He's not Brady. Man, he's in the prime of his career. They should make a move to be able to change this franchise. And Khalil Mack would be that kind of guy. Because you can't just always just look at Aaron Rodgers, okay, what he can do. You have to look at what's in the NFC, what's in his own division with the Minnesota Vikings, the amount of pressure that they can put on him, the cover people that they have outside. So why don't we get Aaron Rodgers a little bit of help? Get him an elite pass rusher on the other side and get him some type of running game. I mean, their running game has been so pathetic that it's hard to win being one-dimensional. If you look at their leading rusher last year, a little over 500 yards. There's only three teams in the league that were worse than him, and Russell Wilson had more rushing yards than their leading rusher. So it lets you know how bad and one-dimensional Green Bay has been when they take the fields with the best quarterback in Aaron Rodgers.
And here's the thing. So he takes over in 2008. Starting in 2009, they make the playoffs every single year until last year when he was injured. So 8 straight seasons in the playoffs, which is one of the 3 longest streaks in modern NFL history. So he takes over in 2008. 2010, they win the whole thing. 2011, they're 15-1 before they're upset in their first playoff game by the Giants. The famous Tom Coughlin's face turned purple on the sidelines of Lambeau. And then the last few years up until last year, I understand why they wouldn't change their philosophy. They said, man, we made the NFC Championship game and lost in overtime to Seattle.
How many points did they give up?
In that one, I think that was 28-22.
Yes.
Now, they did lose an epic game against Arizona in overtime once, 51-45 in the playoffs. But in 2014, NFC Championship game, overtime loss. The next year, overtime loss to Arizona. That's the famous Aaron Rodgers two Hail Mary game. 2016, NFC Championship loss to Arizona. That's the 44-point game. When you saw Rodgers just have a look on his face on the sideline like mid-second quarter, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. We can score every time. We're never getting a stop. And so you could look at that and say, hey, that's a very successful team. Aside from New England, who's been more successful this decade? Another way to look at it is you can't judge your success by everyone else's when you have the best player in the league. When you have the best player in the league, you shouldn't be one of the teams that is successful. You should be the most successful. And they haven't done that. I can't put that on Rodgers. I know some people say he doesn't have no comeback wins or I watch the guy play. He is as skilled of a quarterback as anyone I've seen in the history of the sport. It's the pieces around him.
Yeah, and the comeback wins, you can score, but if your defense don't stop them, you end up holding the L.
Right.
So the reason why he doesn't have those comeback wins is not because he wasn't productive in those late critical situations. It's that he wasn't on the field for the last series of the game.
But a little more promising when you look at the addition of a guy like Jimmy Graham into that offense, and then you think maybe they could get Khalil Mack. And does that give you a little more promise heading into this season?
Well, I mean, it's just a rumor about Khalil Mack. I need to see him in Green Bay.
All right,
and I believe that he can change that franchise a lot like Reggie White, because at that time, they didn't have a franchise quarterback. Reggie changed the culture there, and a lot of guys wanted to go to Green Bay there. Besides the time that Brett Favre, those were the most exciting times in Green Bay the last 30 years. Man, if you trade for Khalil Mack, you get one of the premier rushers on that field in Green Bay that I believe is conducive for an edge rusher. It's a slow surface. It doesn't have a whole bunch of grass on it year-round. So I believe it matches up for how they want to play and with having Aaron Rodgers on the other side.
Right. And Jenna, you asked in the morning meeting, you asked me a really interesting question, I thought, which was about, you know I love lists, and you were asking about Rodgers in the Pantheon, because you brought up that Tom Brady, who's considered the greatest of all time, plays in the same era as Rodgers. Cris and I both regularly say Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. And so why do we not include Rodgers in the greatest of all time discussion? And it's purely because, so who's in that discussion? Brady. How many rings he got? 5. Montana, he got 4. Elway, he got 2. Manning's got 2. Like Peyton, not Eli, of course, even though I guess they both have 2.
Yes.
Like all Aaron needs is one more. I'm not saying that's all he's going to get, and I'm not even saying he's going to get that. But if he gets one more, once he has the multiple championships, his numbers are so jaw-dropping. He has a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. No one other than Brady in league history even has a 3-to-1. He has the best passer rating in NFL history by a wide margin. It's just only one Super Bowl and only one appearance. Like, that's the rub with him consistently.
I think the biggest indictment against Aaron Rodgers is not about the playoff success. I believe that in this era that you talk about, forget about Brady. Ben's got 2. Eli's got 2. Okay, so there's some other people that have rings that don't have his ability.
All right, he needs to win 10 more rings, and he's going to be in the conversation. Coming up, can Sam Darnold lock up the Jets starting job tonight? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back. We're going to get to Sam Darnold in a second, but first, Jarvis Landry continues to make highlight reel catches, diving one-handed grab in practice. Browns are going to win the Super Bowl this year.
That's a nice catch by Jarvis. That was it. I don't know if you can tell from that clip there, but it's in the back corner of the end zone. So him falling doesn't matter. No yards after catch available there. Hey, what, he got the tip of the ball, see?
Oh, yeah, you got to catch the tip of it.
That's a good catch.
Watch the fat, catch the tip. That's a nice grab. Number 80, he has filled the highlights. I like it. I like it. You okay, Jenna?
Yep. Moving on to college hoops. Duke freshman Zion Williamson elevates for the chase down block. It was called a goaltend. Still impressive, though. Watch it.
How high up he get here?
Oh.
I mean, that's 12 feet. That's got to be. Like,
if you're not a college basketball fan, when Duke is on, you got to turn on the TV this year. This kid is ridiculous. 6'7". I mean, he's 270 pounds. He's explosive. He's a rare. You will not say after watching him you've seen an athlete his size. It's hard to go through basketball history and say you've never seen it, but this guy's a special athlete.
And he's not the best player on their team. He's not even their top recruit. He might end up being the best player, but R.J. Barrett, who I think had 39 last night, was the higher-ranked recruit.
All right, sticking with the same game, and it's Zion again, this time soaring for the monster put back.
Nick, we need to inform the people. What about the kid's name here?
So Zion Williamson, what was it? See, his father said? He said. He said you tell him the exact pronunciation because this is your specialty.
Yeah, I told you the story. You messed it up.
Oh, okay.
He said his name is really Zion. It's named Zion, but he said that he heard some people on TV say Zion. He said, that sounds pretty cool, so he would like to have that one on TV.
Oh, okay.
But his real name, Zion.
I would like to have the last 30 seconds on TV back because you did tell me that and I couldn't remember it.
By the rim, goaltender.
I got it. The emphasis is on the second
Jenna's going up, Nick going down.
You got it. After a testy and heated week of practice, the Jets will play Washington tonight. We'll see if all that machismo spills over onto the field. Sam Darnold will play in his second preseason game. After a solid debut, Darnold took the majority of the first-team reps in practice this week, looking to solidify the starting job. No pressure, kid. Just save our entire franchise. CeCe, what do you hope to see from Sam Darnold in his second preseason game now?
What you want to continue to see is they're going to expand the playbook, all right? And I've been following the story real close as far as the practices, charting what he does in practice. And for a young player, he's very, very accurate. And he doesn't throw the ball where the defense can get their hands over it, so potentially turn it over. So those are the things as we continue to grow. Watch him because they're going to put more pressure on him in tonight's game. There's going to be more blitzes. He's going to see some different looks and see, does the defense get their hand on the football? Are there potential turnovers? Because that's where young players kill you. You can live with missing a guy. You can live with even some bad assignments. But turning the football over, and you don't want to see a young guy trying to do too much and end up forcing turnover. So that's what I'll be watching in tonight's game. I believe he will be the starter in week number 1 based on how he's dominated the practices. And we heard yesterday what glowing remarks Josh Norman had after the joint practices coming from Washington. Very impressed with the young quarterback.
I'm glad you keyed in on the interceptions or lack thereof, tipped balls, things where it could be super negative plays, because that was his problem his last year at USC. The reason he was going into the season, the consensus, no doubt about it, going to be the #1 pick. And then during the season, there were questions, oh, okay, did this guy get better between last year and this year? And those questions were because he was turning the ball over more. It was because instead of the interceptions going down, they ticked up to 13 in 14 games played, essentially won a game. So he's played one clean preseason game, but that was, he still went 3rd overall and could have gone 1 overall. So it wasn't enough to really hurt his draft stock. But that was the one but with him, was does he try to fit it into pockets that he doesn't necessarily have the arm to get it to and create turnovers?
And tonight it becomes very important because the reason why he had that digression at USC after having the phenomenal redshirt freshman year was he had less talent, which he's going to have tonight.
Yeah.
All right? And also, they start putting pressure on him, so then he started trying to do more. Can he still play within the confines of the offense? And if he feels like he's undermanned, if he feels like they're behind in the score, does he revert back to what we saw at SC? Those are the things that are really important going forward.
And unlike what's happening in Cleveland, it feels as though the Jets want him to be their starter right out of the gate to start with him.
It's a great, he's in pole position. That's the one thing Darnold has going for him that I don't believe any of the other 5 first-round picks have, which is right now he's the leader in the clubhouse to be the starter. At least I believe he is. He's the guy the Jets, their plan once they drafted him at 3 was hopefully he can start week 1. That obviously wasn't the plan for Lamar. It obviously wasn't the plan for Baker. I don't think it was the plan for Josh Rosen. I'm not sure about Josh Allen because A.J. McCarron and Peterman are the guys he's competing with. But with Sam Darnold, they want him to be able to start week 1 for a culture change, for the fan bases matter. And how relevant your team is matters. And when, especially in New York City, it's a 2-team town. And I mean, all pro sports leagues, it's a 10-team town. And the Jets have been near the bottom of that totem pole. They want him. So do you remember Tiger at the British Open? The shot, this is going to sound like an odd analogy, but the shot that you criticized him the most for was the flop shot when he already had the lead. He wasn't trying to come back. Darnold has the benefit. He already has the lead. He doesn't have to go out and win the job, I don't feel. I feel like
he's not playing against the scoreboard.
He's not trying to chase.
He's playing against the culture.
Yes.
He's playing against that draft, playing with that draft pick, the organization. I understand that.
And so he doesn't have to go out there and all of a sudden, man, I have to be great tonight to jump over this guy. I have to play a clean game and play well to make sure someone doesn't jump over me. That's the situation that I think Darnold finds himself in.
And they've pushed him to do that, giving him first team reps in practice, whatnot, and really pushing him, starting him tonight. And we haven't heard that much about with what's going on with Teddy Bridgewater. It looks like all signs point towards, as long as he does what Nick says and plays clean game tonight, leading towards the first game of the season.
Yes, and we tend to not look back on the first week of camp where he missed some time.
Right.
So Sam has put himself in good position, and this is not like Buffalo. All right, in Buffalo, there's not a whole bunch of talent in the quarterback room.
Right.
So for me, Josh McCown is not one of my favorites as a starter, but as a backup, a guy who can mentor and get a young guy ready, I think he's one of the perfect fits. Now, Teddy Bridgewater still believes he has a lot of football left in him, so Teddy's there trying to prove himself. So I believe there's a good pull there with the Jets. The thing that I get concerned about is you have to know where you are. And this Jets team, and Todd Bowles, they're going to be a defensive-dominated team. That's why the turnovers on this type of team. Remember Mark Sanchez when they started playing, when he was successful. Now, he was never going to be a star quarterback. He didn't know that. I believe that Sam will be a star one day, but right now he's got to be able to play to the strong suit of that team, and that's to the defense.
And I'm glad you both mentioned Teddy Bridgewater because they played, I think they played Saturday, so Teddy hasn't made the show about how he played. In his first real action in a couple years, Teddy was 7 of 8, 85 yards and a 151 rating. He played in a couple series really well.
Yes.
So but he isn't the future. Darnold is. But Teddy could be playing for 31 other teams. Watch Darnold tonight. Also see if Teddy can put together back-to-back good games because there will be a quarterback injury. There will be a team that doesn't love their backup situation or something like that. So even if Teddy isn't a Jet, if he's one of our favorite guys. If he continues on this on this trajectory, he could find himself when the Jets were saying, hey, for the right price, we could see what the price would be if he continues to show health and the accuracy that he's always had. Never going to have the strongest arm, most athletic, but supreme accuracy. He showed that Saturday night in the Jets game.
Fantastic comeback story
Absolutely.
for him. All right, let's take a break. Coming up, which NBA executive agrees with Nick Wright that LeBron is the greatest of all time? That's next. This is First Things First. Friday on Fox, the Big Three playoffs live from Dallas. Catch Baron Davis and Nate Robinson with a trip to the championship on the line. It all begins at 8 Eastern on Fox, or stream it live on the Fox Sports app.
Nate Robinson looked feisty in the first weekend of the tournament. That game winner ended up getting his team into the playoffs, 4 seed against Power. And watching Mahmoud Abdul-Rahman, bless you, Jenna.
Fired up about
bless
that.
him, like Jarvis Landry would say.
Yeah.
The salt and pepper beard, seeing guys do that at a high athletic level, I love it. Mahmoud Abdul-Rahman still hitting threes.
Yeah, I might have to hold off on the gray beard there. That just not necessarily sending the type of message I'd like to put. Considering I just got here on the earth.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I like it on him. It should be fun to watch this weekend, man.
All right, time to go viral. So we are going viral. Check this out. Video making its way around the internet. Little young kid by the name of Arat showing off the soccer skills. He is tremendous. Look at this.
I mean,
the focus.
That's amazing. Those are legitimate moves.
I think we should start getting kids' videos, especially playing soccer. Because there's so many kids out there aspiring, little golfers, little soccer players. Look.
Wait, and he knows how to celebrate. Did you see him work the camera?
The whole thing. But, that is... that's amazing, man. That is great.
The other little kid need to put on a shirt, because I could just see him now in 20 years as a grown man walking around with no shirt on. Put your shirt on, Ketta.
Stories to start your morning. Big-time recruits R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson combined for 63 points last night in an exhibition game. Zion even went 3 for 4 from the only place he didn't think he could, beyond the arc.
I just had never seen the video. Every video we see of him is dunking on some little
right there.
6th grader or something. We saw him taking off on the free throw line at a Duke practice 2 days ago. But yes, it's great to see that he's got a jump shot. This Duke team is going to be exciting to watch.
And, by the way, they had all 3 top 3 recruits in this class. Cam Reddish didn't even play. But your point about, can Zion hit threes? He was 3 or 4 last night. Now it's a set shot. Whatever it is, having that in his game when he instantly becomes the most athletic person playing basketball.
This should be able to help you out. Tell your boy, Ben Simmons, to call Zion to get some tips of how to shoot a J.
Okay, I'll hit up Ben right after the show. No problem.
All right, to the NFL now. Dez Bryant will meet with the Browns today. Dez needs a job. Cleveland needs a wide receiver. Indians. The Browns, after trading Corey Coleman and with Josh Gordon still MIA, do need someone to catch the ball. CC, what does Dez have to prove to the Browns in this meeting?
I think from a mental standpoint that he's ready to attack an NFL season. He's been away from football. He's been away from a team for a long, long time. The general manager, Dorsey, he doesn't know what Dez's state of mind is. So when you sit down in these types of meetings, they need to know you're committed to football. And you're committed to the Cleveland Browns playing football, and you're committed to doing it at a high level. If he's able to do that, I believe he gets signed today by the Cleveland Browns.
One other thing, if I'm John Dorsey, I need to ask about now, thanks to Dez's tweets. How healthy are you? I had no reason to think Dez wasn't healthy at the end of last season when the Cowboys cut him. But when he was tweeting during the Browns game, he said, I had to get my body right. I had to take time. I want to know what that was about.
And if you want to know that, I'm willing to go out there to the field right now and give you 15 minutes of a preview.
Well, Dez
should be in that type of shape and that type of mentality at this stage. It's August. All the good football players are playing football, are fighting.
All right, speaking of which, more training camp brawls. DeAndre Hopkins kicked out of practice after fighting with Niners safety Jimmy Ward. They will both practice again today before facing off on Saturday. See, we've seen a ton of these preseason brawls already. Is this out of the ordinary?
It's out of the ordinary because we see more joint practices. That's why you're going to see more fighting. You're always going to be in competitive situation with DBs, wide receivers. As we've seen most of the fights, All right, that's what they've been recently. Typically, years ago, most of the fights were with all the big people, all right? Offense and defensive linemen. Now you see these guys on the outside talking a lot of trash, and then it gets combative. I don't like seeing it because it doesn't make you a good football player. Just because you can fight, that had nothing to do with how good you can play the game.
And I'll say this, knowing Nuke a little bit, DeAndre Hopkins, it's out of the ordinary for him. He's not a guy that I have a lot of familiarity with him fighting like this. Yeah. So I don't know what happened. It looks
the reason why he was upset was he got a hand to the face.
He got his helmet ripped off,
yeah,
right?
And there's a thing that we say, as a wide receiver, I'm not going to hit you in your head. And as a DB, you shouldn't hit me in my face, especially coming off the line of scrimmage. That's why his helmet was knocked off, and that's why Nuke retaliated.
Well, a good insight, see. All right,
you
finally.
Hit me in my face, it's on.
Big, we'll keep that.
That's my money maker.
Nick, you and I should keep that in mind. Don't hit Cris in the face.
Nope.
Finally, big praise for a Cowboys wide receiver. Jerry Jones says that Tavon Austin brings, quote, Michael Irvin-ish energy to the Cowboys. Yes, that Michael Irvin. See, first, what was your reaction to this comparison?
Well, first, Jerry, I do appreciate it. But Michael Irvin is a rare leader. Now, people might question, like, is he a good leader? On a football team, Michael Irvin is a hell of a leader, and you want him on your football team. Not only because of his passion for the game, Michael has a really high football IQ. And Michael is an encourager to the offensive linemen. He can be a distraction to the quarterback. Troy Aikman and him had a good little relationship where Troy let him know as far as, hey, you can only push me so far. But their relationship, they pushed each other to be great. Emmett will tell you that Michael was a tremendous influence on his ability to be a great Cowboy. So Tavon Austin, I've been knowing Tavon since he's not a great leader. Now, he's a chatty guy. He's a little small little guy that you want to have on the team, but he is not Michael Irvin. I mean, Michael Irvin, I tell Nick all the time, if I'm getting a wide receiver group together, you want it like a basketball team. Michael Irvin's like a small forward. He can be like a power forward. If we want to play small ball, Mike can play center. If I need him to play the point, Mike can do that because he can run inside routes. He can run outside routes. Michael, not great speed, but could get deep. So, no, Tavon, Jerry, like...
And here's the other thing. It is hard to be that type of leader and bring that type of energy to a team if you're not a great player. It's not impossible, but it is very hard. Now Irvin, I think he is almost historically remembered even greater than his numbers would suggest because he did all these other things. Because he was the heartbeat of one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. Like Emmett was, you can argue, their best player. Troy's their quarterback, and but Irvin was the emotion. Here's the thing with Michael Irvin, and which is why we got to be careful with these types of comparisons. Because of Michael's off-the-field stuff and the fur coat and the drama when he was there, some people have that in their mind about him, as opposed to on Thanksgiving in, I think, '95 with the jerseys with the stars on the shoulders, the triple tap to himself in the end zone as a part of a huge win against, at the point in time, the best team in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. There are so many moments when Michael Irvin came through for that team on the field and on the sideline, getting guys mentally prepared. It's hard to do that.
In the NBA, you can lead from the bench. In the NFL, you can't lead from the bench. There's too much action. There's too many plays on the field. 70 plays offense and defensively every game, at least 20 to 25 special teams plays. If you're not in the action, it's hard to have a speaking role as far as what is going on in those games.
Was Jerry Jones speaking about something other than just his leadership? Where does Tavon Austin fit into the Dallas Cowboys roster?
Well, this is a strange thing about Tavon because he's always been a change of pace, a guy out of the backfield. He is not your standard wide receiver. And he hasn't made an impact as a wide receiver since he's been in the league. In Dallas's practices, funny as it's been, he hadn't played much running back. He's played a lot of wide receivers. So this is the thing we're going to have to see if what they're doing in practice transfers to the game. They do need wide receiver help. Right. And I do believe this group has more speed than the Dallas wide receiving groups in the last couple of years, but will they utilize it? Will they utilize his speed on the football field and put him outside and allow him to run some of those deep routes? I don't think they will. I think this is a lot of talk, and it's going to be more like Michael Douglas compared to Michael Irvin.
Something was coming with the Michael.
I was waiting for
me too.
it.
So
Speaking of
I thought it was going to be Michael Scott.
There's only one
Michael Scott. Speaking of Michaels.
Another
Jerry.
Michael. New topic, the concept of the GOAT, the greatest of all time. In the NBA, the name at or near the top of every one of those discussions is LeBron James. James will enter his 16th season this year with a new home playing for the Lakers. Actually, he's got like 12 homes out there. Coming off what might have been a career best season last year, some say he is the greatest, and it looks like Rockets general manager Daryl Morey agrees.
You just look at his ability to generate wins and championship probability over time, and you basically break that down. And obviously, you don't need all the numbers. You can watch as well and see that, but if you basically isolate that and also look at the career he's had, frankly, I think it's at this point it's become a bit of a big margin actually, where he's come out ahead. I know that's a little controversial.
Well, let's discuss that little controversy. See, Daryl Morey says that LeBron is the GOAT by a pretty big margin. Where do you fall on that?
This is I got a lot of respect for his overall opinion, but it's really hard, and especially to say gaps. It's really hard to say that there's a gap between, say, the 5 greatest players and whoever you want to be. If that Kareem, if you want to be Jordan, if you want to be LeBron, if you want Wilt in there, if you want Bill Russell in there, to say that there's a big gap in trying to distinguish their careers, I don't see where he can see that. Now, the analytics might point to that. I don't see it that way. Basketball's been judged for a long, long time on a number of different things. One's been championships, other things been on scoring the basketball. Now, LeBron James, his ability to have an impact on the game, rebounding the basketball, passing the basketball, and scoring the basketball, it is one of a kind. But I don't see the gap between him and Michael Jordan. And what Michael Jordan did was truly, truly sensational. So maybe he thinks that maybe it's one of those Peyton Manning discussions, like where Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback and Tom Brady is the greatest postseason quarterback. Because what Michael did in the NBA playoffs, no one can say. So I don't see a gap in that, all right? Michael Jordan, what he did, I would say there's a gap between what he did and what all the other great players did, especially in the playoffs.
So the reason that Daryl can say that and what I think it's very interesting hearing it from him, and not just CeCe joked about it earlier, not just because I'm friends with Daryl, but because he kind of started the wave of analytical-based organizations in the NBA. Baseball was way ahead of the curve on that. Daryl and the Rockets were the team to really get that going in the NBA. You can look at things like value over replacement player, box score plus minus, all these things where LeBron has Jordan, where LeBron's ahead of Jordan. But what he is saying is not about skill level. Because that's where C's right. There is no big gap between LeBron and Jordan or Russell and Wilt or Kareem. And a skill level, those are all, we're really picking hairs. But you can use the numbers to look at, in the totality of your career, who has impacted the most games, who has impacted winning the most, and who has had the biggest impact on how many teams have a chance to win a championship. And that's where LeBron's longevity, that's where LeBron's health, and that's where the fact that, to use a phrase from Cris, where his cement is not dry, where he can create this level of separation that I believe he is in the process of completing, essentially. Even if you believe, well, at the end of the game, I'd rather have Jordan. What Daryl is saying is, it's a 48-minute game. And who would you rather have the guy, even if the numbers don't suggest there's ever been a more clutch playoff performer than LeBron, but let's just say my eye test says Jordan was more clutch. If we have a guy that says, over the course of the first 47 minutes, it's not a tie game, we're up 6, that's the guy I want. If you look at it from a pure, just raw data standpoint, I hear what Daryl's saying. But even if you don't, and this is the thing that I think people are going to have to come to terms with, if you didn't have any of the data, because, Cris, some of that data is the 6 championships. That might be basic data, but that's just data. And you just watched these two guys play a game. Who do you think you would say is better? The guy that's bigger, the guy that's stronger, the guy that's faster, the guy who can jump higher, or the other guy? So without any data, LeBron probably wins the eye test. and then the data also all supports him. Like, does that weigh anything to you?
Well, I watched Michael Jordan. I watched him shut down the greatest scorers in the game in his era. All right, so not only was he sensational on the offensive end, on the defensive end, Michael Jordan was a special basketball player. And on the offensive end, even though the game was totally different, the hand check and the physicality, Michael Jordan would score 38 points a game in this NBA. All right, so I just don't see it. All right, to me, it's like ice cream. All right, who's your favorite? All right, I'm just not going to continue to have this debate because one guy's got 6 championships, got 6 MVPs, and a sensational basketball player, and sensational at almost everything he did. Now, Nick say, well, the three-point shot. Well, if he had to shoot the three-point, just like everyone else's game grew through the years, Michael Jordan's game would have grown. LeBron, if he had played in the 80s and 90s, he wouldn't have been shooting threes. You know the reason why? Because the game didn't require that.
Agreed, but here's the thing, and I didn't bring up the three-point shot because I actually agree with that point. I think Larry Bird could have been, you look at his volume three-point shooting, it doesn't even match up to, I mean, pick almost anybody that's J.R. Smith's, but we know how good of a shooter Larry Bird was. But what I think is important is that we don't only do that one way. And if people have brought up hand checking as if it was a lightsaber. I hear people bring up hand checking as if that was the one thing that there's like the dead ball era in baseball, pre-hand checking and post-hand checking. And if hand checking has the impact that I hear people insist it would make, people have to recognize the 6'8", 270 guy right there, he gets the hand check as well. So we can't say Jordan was this amazing defender and he had to go against hand checking and then not say, but Jordan got the benefit of the hand checking. LeBron's not as good of a defender.
No, we didn't say he got the benefit of the hand checking. That was part of the game. The game was far more. You could steer a guy to a point on the court.
Right.
Yes. And Michael Jordan was great at it. It's not like I'm guessing that he was great. Like, he was great at it. That's why he had all the first team, all NBA.
And it was Defensive Player of the Year, and there's no doubt about that.
And it wasn't because of hand checking. It was because he was a great defender.
Okay, but you said without hand checking, Jordan averages 38.
Well, I'm just saying if you transfer what he would do as an offensive player, playing in this NBA, he would.
Of course his offensive game would be better. My point is the big, strong guy right there, if he's defensively allowed to do the hand checking himself. And one other thing I have to say, because all of it, this has become a new in vogue thing, to discuss LeBron as a greatly inferior defender. When we do know that Jordan's teammate, his entire run, was arguably the greatest perimeter defender ever.
No, he had 2 of the best defenders
For
ever.
the second half, he had Rodman. I know, but he had Pippen throughout. So, Jordan didn't. Most often, the best player on the other team was getting checked by Pippen. Right? Unless it was
It wasn't consistent. They rotated between the 3 of them. Ron Harper, and that's the reason why they were so good. Ron Harper at the point would rotate. They would switch off the way Golden State does now between Ron Harper, Jordan, and Pippen. And if you wanted to do a pick and roll with Rodman, they would throw Rodman and they would all switch. And that's the reason why they were very, very unique.
Well, we got to the bottom of that finally.
Yeah,
that's Daryl. Appreciate it, Daryl.
Coming
Daryl's
up.
off the show. Who do we kick off the show yesterday?
We got a list.
Kicked off
Dwight Howard is off.
Dwight Howard, bam, he's banned.
LeVar Ball is off.
It's not Daryl's fault. He was asked the question. You gave him an
and now
watch
Daryl's
this.
off.
No,
All right,
Daryl
coming
can't be
up.
off the show.
Okay.
Can Deshaun Watson replicate his magic in year 2? That is next on First Things
I got another
First.
analytics.
Here on First Things First, it's a miracle. Former head coach Eric Mangini joins the show. Let me explain why. He has tried over 300 times to get here over the course of the last week. He has missed 299 times.
Got here just in time for this, Coach. Got it fresh off the presses.
This is the most exciting part of my week.
See what that is? That's every NFL regular season
we're going to discuss
game.
week 14 in about 2 minutes. He's got his picks, so it's a lot. Vegas, listen.
Hey, Vegas.
Welcome back. Good to see you.
Anyway, after much trouble traveling, we're happy to have you here, Coach. All right, good time to be in Houston. Astros are your defending champs. Rockets almost beat the Warriors, and Deshaun Watson is back. The Texans' prized quarterback lit up the league for a month and a half last year before tearing his ACL in practice. This year, increased role, increased expectations. Here's Deshaun Watson on what has changed entering year 2.
Just the knowledge of the game and knowledge of the system. So I'm a lot more comfortable, light years more than last year. And I'm still learning, still growing, and still putting the pieces together.
All right, Coach, how are you going to define success for Deshaun Watson now? He is coming off the injury, but there are a lot of expectations sort of thrown at him as he starts this season.
Well, he said it the best. He's learning and he's growing, so it's going to be interesting to see how much he's learned. And we know that he can make all the plays when things break down. He can improv. He does all those things really well. How well can he operate within the system? How well can he operate within the pocket? And that doesn't mean you don't take advantage of his ability to move and his ability to make those off-timing plays. But what can he do down in and down out? And there's a whole lot more tape on him than there was a year ago. I'm interested to see, too, what the staff does, because they adjusted to him to some degree, but now they've had a year to plan and put together his best system. So what have they done offensively as a staff? What has he done to become more proficient in the pocket? And then where is he coming off the injury? We talk so much about Carson Wentz and him coming off the injury. He's coming off a substantial injury too. So how does that affect the way that he runs around?
And so you mentioned they now have tape on him because he got hurt right around the time that we typically see when rookie quarterbacks play really well that first month of the season. Once you have 5 or so games of tape on a guy, that's when we often see something of an in-season regression, right? And so he never had to deal with that. We saw him at his absolute apex. His last game, threw for 4 touchdowns. The game before that, 3 touchdowns. The game before that, 5 touchdowns. And then he got hurt in practice. So as a defensive coach, what are those types of things with a rookie quarterback, once he's been in the league a month, that you're looking for to then exploit? Like, what weaknesses, what are you pulling on?
Well, you're identifying what schemes other people did that he had trouble with. And you're identifying what ways people kept him in the pocket that were most effective. And every quarterback has a fingerprint. Every offensive coordinator has a fingerprint. And defensive coordinators go through and you identify what their tendencies are and their default tendencies are. And then whatever weakness they have, you attack and you attack and you see whether or not that guy has a second pitch and can actually adjust to it. And the good ones can, and the other ones, they just keep banging their head against the wall.
Yeah, one thing I would start doing is I would try to attack that offensive line. They don't have a good running game and consistent. You don't know if the coach is committed to the running game. So as a defense, yes, I've seen this tape. I'm trying to take them out of the things that I know that they like to do. And the reason why young quarterbacks, they hit that wall as far as growth is because they don't have a changeup. Like the offensive staff is trying to figure out, man, what are two or three things they do well? And besides that, there's not a whole bunch that they can go to. Veteran players, there's more things they can go to. They have their quick passing game. If you blitz them, they'll throw the ball deep. If you have them 4 weak, they'll change the protection. When you're a young player, you don't have all that volume of knowledge and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see the first month of the season. Can they protect them? Because neither one of their tackles, I believe, is the type of tackle that you want behind Deshaun Watson. And also from a defensive standpoint, I wouldn't play him a bunch of man-to-man. You see a lot of those big plays he made last year, man-to-man down the field with 2 guys who can really, really run. So I'd mix it up, have some zone blitzes, but I wouldn't play a whole bunch of man against him, and I would stop him from running the football by not playing man either.
Take a step back. Why did we all fall in love with Deshaun Watson so quickly last year? He played a handful of games, and everyone has already anointed him a success in this league, which we're very usually hesitant, at least these two, you're usually hesitant to do early on with young quarterbacks.
Well, I was hesitant as well, and that offense also was struggling. I mean, struggling might have been kind before Deshaun Watson got in, and then he was so electric, and he made plays that when you sit back and you watch it, even from whether it's a fan perspective or from a scheme perspective, they're still really special plays. And when you see it happening multiple weeks in a row, it stops being something that's a fluke. Yeah. And it starts being a real problem that you're going to have to deal with week in and week out. And I remember doing him in the draft, and I didn't know how well he was going to develop as a passer, but he is special with the ball in his hand. And I know we talk about Lamar Jackson. No, Deshaun Watson, when you watched his college tape, when he had the ball in his hand as a runner, it was different. It was unique. It's really something that I hadn't seen in a while.
The reason I think people fell in love with him was threefold. One, we had seen what the Texans' offense looked before he got there and what they looked like after after. Very rarely do we get almost like a perfect test case where, okay, one variable changed, and how did the results of the experiment change? Okay, with DESHAUN, 35 points a game. Without him, with the same talent on the offensive end, 13 points a game. Because while the Texans were marred by terrible injuries last year, aside from DESHAUN, they were on the defensive side of the ball. It's not like, oh, when DESHAUN went out, so did Nuke, so did Will Fuller. That's not the situation. The other reason is because there were some people, myself being one of them, who saw this kid at Clemson. Everyone saw him at Clemson, but who said, man, some things don't translate college to pro, but the closest thing to a pro defense in college football is Alabama. And I watched him beat up Alabama in consecutive national championship games. So there was some confirmation bias. But if I may ask you guys a question, because you mentioned the offensive line. The Texans have a bad offensive line. I think most people think if you have a mobile, like the antidote for a bad offensive line is a mobile quarterback, and maybe to a degree. But aren't those sometimes the hardest quarterbacks to block for? Because you don't know where they're going to be. Because if you're a tackle, like, doesn't that make the offensive line jobs harder, even if he can escape that first rush? Like, if he rolls out early now, all of a sudden, am I saying that right?
Well, it's your theory is right, but it's not correct. Okay. Because actually a guy who can't move behind a bad offensive line is going to get hurt. All right? So people make excuses that a guy who's mobile is hard to block for. But if the guy's not mobile and I miss my guy, who do you want back there? I want a guy back there because he can cover up for the mistakes. And also, you can move the pocket if a guy's mobile. If a guy is, if he's going to be a statue in the pocket, then it becomes, you have less variables. You can't run any RPOs because in the RPOs, you can slow down that rush. So you still have other threats with a mobile quarterback. Most coaches would always want a mobile quarterback over a guy who couldn't run at all.
Yeah, and I would love to have a mobile quarterback. What you don't want is a jittery quarterback, because there's quarterbacks in the pocket that they move before pressure even happens. They're looking down the field. They don't see anybody open. They think the rush is going to come, and then they move. And as an offensive lineman, you're blocking the pocket for a very specific spot. So now
those are the problems Randall Cunningham and Michael Vick had in their career.
Yeah, they vacate way too early.
Coach, he was coming. I saw him coming on the left. Yeah. I could feel it.
And you watch the tape, there's nobody within a mile of the guy. And then all the offensive linemen are angry because they're trying to give you what you've asked them for. So it's seeing whether or not that guy has the instincts to really anticipate when pressure's coming versus just being nervous.
Guys that run before they have to, that can be a problem for offensive linemen.
It's a huge problem, and offensive linemen get really angry about that because they can't see where the quarterback is, but the defensive lineman can. So if you're setting up and you've got inside leverage and this guy's vacating.
Yeah, they're set up to create a pocket.
Yeah, and your guy leaves.
Imaginary pocket every play. And if the guy leaves the pocket, he's on his own.
Yeah, and I can't see that because I have my back to you, but the guy who's rushing sees it because he's looking at you.
All right, Coach, stick around. Coming up, what does Aaron Rodgers have to do to get back to the playoffs? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First with Coach Mangini. Jalen Ramsey gave an interview to GQ. Let's just say Ramsey didn't pull any punches.
Yes.
We will bring you these throughout the morning, but here he is, Jalen Ramsey, on Matt Ryan. Ready? I think Matt Ryan's overrated. You can't tell me you win MVP 2 years ago and then last year you're a complete bust and you still got Julio Jones? There's no way that should ever happen. I don't care. You know what that tells me? That tells me Kyle Shanahan left, went to San Francisco, got Garoppolo, made Garoppolo this big thing, and now Garoppolo is a big name. And now Matt Ryan has this bad year. All right, well, was it really you? Or was it your coach? Stream of consciousness.
And if you didn't read this interview, like Jenna said, we're going to bring you more later in the show. It ramps up from there. Matt Ryan, he had flames for everybody. Matt Ryan got the least of it, but there you go. Your guy Jalen giving coaches credit. I'm sure you like that.
Yeah, I mean, that must be a really comfortable conversation that they're having in Jacksonville about his, willingness to blow up the rest of the league. Like, why? Why? What's the upside of this?
Well, real quick, may I ask you, because I thought this might be your reaction. What's the downside of this?
You anger almost, I don't know how much the league, half the league, a quarter of the league, whatever it is. Why are you disparaging other athletes? Why are you attacking other athletes? Why don't you just worry about your own game? You
know what I would do the first play of the season? I would line up Odell Beckham to my left. They play the Giants, right?
Jacksonville?
I'd throw a screen pass That means my left tackle would be feigning, let the defensive end go, and then he would be going out to the sideline. And you know what he'd be doing? Chop blocking the first corner. Because he did say Eli was trash, right?
He said it's not really Eli. I think it's Odell. I won't say Eli's good. I'll say Odell's good.
Yeah, I'm just going to, like, there's going to be a lot of offensive linemen that he didn't criticize, but they're going to be taken up for their quarterback. And that's something that Nick Wright doesn't understand. And that's what's going to happen to Jalen. He's going to get bust on his knees by a bunch of big guys and like, why are all these guys after me? Because all that stuff you said about all their guys. Yeah.
He actually went off on 22 quarterbacks.
He went off on everybody.
Okay, they're coming for him.
Well, let me ask you this. If we're actually going to do this.
Do y'all think
fine.
I made this up?
No, because it's something I don't understand. So I'm going to go further on things I evidently don't understand. So let me ask you this before we get into the topic. If that is an effective strategy, if that helps the Giants win football games, then why wouldn't they do that every week?
Because every corner's not chirping. You don't have to do that.
No, but hold on. No. Let's follow
We're going to have the screen game in the game anyway. But now when I go out there, who is Nate Solder looking for? He's looking for 2-0.
Right. But so, again, just help me understand, because I don't understand. Maybe you can help me understand, since I evidently don't get it. If the Giants would be doing that if it helps them win games, right? To help you win a game. If that helps you win a game, they should do that whether he said it or not. Or are they doing that because he did get in their head and it doesn't help them win the game? I just don't understand.
I don't think Cris is just saying it necessarily helps them win the game. I think he's saying it helps them send a message in terms of, you know, we support the guys on this team and we believe firmly in it, and we're going to get an understanding.
Okay. All right. So so they are going to adjust their game plan based on what he said.
No, I don't think it's going to be something that comes down
They're not running
top-down
screen pass
organizationally.
anyway, Nick. It's in the game plan.
I think it's just getting an understanding.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten an understanding with somebody?
Well, no, I get plenty of understandings. Listen. I knew you wouldn't like it. I think guys, if every guy in the league was like, what?
Who did you liked it?
I think if every guy in the league were like Jalen Ramsey, it wouldn't be good. And if every guy in the league were like Marvin Harrison,
how many guys have we ever seen like Jalen be successful?
What? Well,
show me the list of them.
I mean, Deion talked a lot, right?
No, he didn't.
Deion didn't talk a lot?
No, look up the tape. Look it up. Deion didn't do stuff like this.
Deion talked about his ability. He didn't disparage other people.
I don't even know what to call it, but Deion was not that. Look it up.
No, so you're saying he talked, but not like this, not about other guys.
I know Deion. I played against Deion. There's a lot of things Deion was, but a talker and opposition and the quarterbacks, no, Deion, he wasn't that. No, that wasn't Deion. So he didn't get this from Deion. This is a Jalen thing.
You think it'll hurt him?
Tell me, I'm waiting on the list, all right? Because we do lists. Show me guys in the league that have played at a high level and talk trash.
Okay, so if we're talking about their opponent, Chad Johnson at his peak. How about that? I saw him in his locker right before he made those Pro Bowls.
Got one guy. Not a great player.
What?
He had some good seasons. Not a great player. Got one guy.
Right. I mean, I'm doing this off the top of my head, see. I honestly...
Because there's not a lot of them, Nick.
Right.
There's a reason why, because pro football is played a certain way. And it's played with your pads and your helmet. It's not played with your mouth most of the time.
I'm curious, why do it now, and how did it set up with this article? Like,
it seemed like the article, they were going through his schedule, right? And he was answering questions about the quarterback.
Flow of consciousness.
And then what happened was they saw what he was saying, so they didn't just started throwing quarterbacks at him, and he gave his honest opinion. Like, I don't know. I mean, he
didn't watch the tape of
Matty.
They got a bite because Matty didn't have that type of year. He had a lot of bad things going on around him. If Jalen had watched the tape, what really happened last year with Matty?
Good news for us. We're going to do this 3 more times because he has as you like to know, a bevy of things that he has to say.
He's got some takes.
All right.
He's got some takes.
Let's talk some Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers will make his preseason debut tonight. Packers and Steelers, not quite as much hype as Super Bowl 45, but close. Okay, not close, but it is a game. Packers missed the playoffs last season for the first time since 2008. Rodgers was a big reason why. Only played 7 games after breaking his collarbone. He says he's excited to get back out there. Coach, how well are the Packers set up to contend this season with Aaron Rodgers back at the helm there?
Well, they should be in great position to contend. They've got one of the best players in football playing quarterback, and whenever he's been playing quarterback, they've been in the mix. And the one year that he wasn't, we saw what happened. So it's going to be interesting to see how the new coaching staff fits in. I mean, there was massive overhaul in the coaching staff, young receivers. There's a lot of moving parts here because they've changed so many things in Green Bay. So how all that fits together and how quickly it fits together, that's the question. And you always go into training camp with one idea of who you are, and then you realize actually what you can do. And they're not always the same thing. And sometimes it takes 3-4 games in the season before you realize who your true identity is. And I think they're going to have to go through that process.
Their true identity is throwing the football. They have to come up with other things. Their offensive line has been really underrated, but has suffered a lot of injuries. Their wide receiving core, they can't sustain an injury to any one of their frontline players. And if Aaron Rodgers gets nicks, we know their season is over with. That's what happens every time Aaron gets hurt. If they don't have enough wins at that time, it's like, oh, can they get to the finish line? It's, you know, that's who the Green Bay Packers are. Now, I hope if some of the rumors are true, I hope they trade for Khalil Mack, because that defense has not been dependable at all. They have not helped Aaron Rodgers. The reason why we only have Aaron Rodgers in the topic bar when we talk about Green Bay, because he's the only star player that they have. Like, they don't have any other player that would be able to draw the attention. And defensively, you got to be able to help a guy out with the types of defenses in the NFC, the types of defenses he's going to have to go through. Let alone forget about the quarterbacks, but those defenses that Aaron Rodgers faces compared to the defense that Green Bay is putting out there. Let's look at the top 8 teams in the NFC. And look who has the worst defense.
And they're all pro defensive players. But I've got takes on this as well. But I saw your face when Cris was saying, like, you don't love this when it comes to Aaron Rodgers.
No, I think at the end of the day, you hear all the time, we got to help Aaron Rodgers, got to help Aaron Rodgers. Who's helping Tom Brady? What's their all-star cast? And trading for Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack needs to stay in Oakland. They need help too. And then to go get this, unicorn, hope that we're going to get a unicorn in preseason to save Aaron Rodgers, I don't get that either. You want to be the highest paid quarterback, but you want to go out and spend high in free agency. There's only so many resources, and you only have so much money and so many draft picks. And once you start spending it, that's it. Look, you're one of the best players, arguably the best quarterback. We can't go and just constantly be worried about helping you.
Well, but there is an element of roster construction where these guys, we can look to Peyton Manning. The one year he won a Super Bowl in Indianapolis, they happened to have Defensive Player of the Year Bob Sanders. They had Freeney throughout a lot of his run, Robert Mathis, but the one year they had not a mediocre defense, but a good defense was the one year they won a Super Bowl.
And they needed that because Peyton Manning was the only quarterback in the history of the NFL playoffs to win a Super Bowl and throw more interceptions than he did touchdowns in that run. So that defense, they saved Peyton Manning actually that year
in Indy. And then obviously he won another Super Bowl in Denver, but that was a defensive-dominated team. Peyton had been injured and benched at one point in the season and came back. Rodgers, when we've seen him win his Super Bowl, they had Charles Woodson at the time. They had a better version. I believe Clay Matthews had double-digit sacks that year. Like, we've got to be fair to what guys need around them. It can't be. It's not the NBA. And it can't be one guy. Hell, in the NBA these days, it can't even just be one guy. I don't look at Rodgers as someone that is always saying, I got to have more help. But the Packers have participated in free agency less than any team in football in the last decade.
Yeah, I believe Tom Brady, he's not happy with his roster either. But Tom Brady has given the Patriots an opportunity, not 1 year, but for a number of years, that they could fluctuate under the salary cap, do whatever you want to do. I don't have to be the highest paid guy. So, Coach, I see what you're saying to a couple points there. And Tom, maybe behind the scenes, not publicly, he never gets in front of the microphone and makes an excuse. So if we're talking about the 2 best players in the league, you definitely talk about a different mentality because Aaron is putting pressure on the Packers to be the highest paid. And he's probably going to make 30, 32 million. He might be making 18 more million than Tom Brady. But Tom Brady, he might be complaining privately. No one knows about that. And he's saying, no matter who you put me out there with, I'm going to win. Because Aaron Rodgers' personnel is probably better than Tom Brady's personnel.
and there's just not unlimited money. Everybody always talks about, well, go get this guy, go get that guy, go do the. There's not. It's a salary cap. And when you want the biggest chunk of that pie, then you have the biggest responsibility to try to bring it home. Now, What more help do you want? You got rid of the whole offensive staff. You got rid of the whole defensive staff.
But he didn't want them to.
You got rid of the GM. Well, I mean, maybe he should have spoken up.
He did speak up. He got upset about that. But hold on.
When did he get upset? Before or after?
He didn't say that he was upset with the changes. He said he was upset.
He wasn't asked about
that they didn't talk to me.
Hold on, but wait, just real quick. We've got to be fair on the Brady stuff. We can't. You can say personnel for personnel because I actually agree with you, especially last year as an example. Patriots didn't have stars on defense. Edelman was out for the year. But we speak glowingly, almost religiously, about the culture in New England, about the coaching in New England, about the preparation in New England. And Brady benefits from that. You talk about that as much as anybody. One of the reasons, I would imagine Tom Brady probably wouldn't be okay with making $14 million a year in comparison to his peers if it wasn't part of, okay, well, I get to the Super Bowl once every 2 years. Rodgers has done everything you can do on the field to help the team. There is, you're right, limited resources, which is why it's important you hit on your draft picks. It's why it's important you make smart free agent signings. The Packers have not done him right over the last decade.
The Patriots have missed on free agency and on draft picks.
Yeah, there's been tons of misses over time.
Are we sitting here saying the Patriots aren't the most well-run organization in the NFL? Aren't they?
They don't pick the best players. They don't draft the best. No, absolutely.
Well, then they must develop the best. They must do something because we talk all the time about
they played situational football better than anyone, and they got the best quarterback.
And look, nobody's 100% in the draft. No one's 100% in free agency. I forget the guy from the Ravens that they had brought in.
Adalius Thomas.
That was a huge miss in free agency where they went out and spent a ton of money. So nobody's perfect, but whatever you have at the end of the day, you got to figure out how to make it work. And by having massive overhauls to coaching staffs and GMs and wanting to be the highest paid player and calling your guys out, that's not necessarily conducive to moving forward in a positive, consistent direction.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.